Have you ever noticed that some of the most intelligent people can be polite, friendly, respectful, and easy to talk to, yet they allow very few people into their private world? They may laugh with many people, work with many people, and have conversations with all kinds of personalities. But when it comes to real friendship, trust, access, and emotional closeness, their circle becomes much smaller. That's not always because they think they're better than everybody else. Sometimes it's because experience taught them something that intelligence alone could never teach. The wrong people can quietly steal years of your life. A person doesn't always destroy your peace by openly attacking you. Sometimes they do it by creating a constant atmosphere of confusion. Sometimes they do it by making every accomplishment feel like a competition. Sometimes they drain you because they're always in need but never available when you need them. Sometimes they make mistake after mistake and then expect you to spend your life listening to their excuses. The dangerous part is that none of these situations may seem serious at first. That's why people can remain trapped in unhealthy relationships, friendships, family situations, and social circles for years before finally realizing how much of themselves they've given away. Intelligent people eventually learn that time isn't an unlimited resource. Your attention isn't unlimited either. Your emotional energy isn't unlimited. Every argument, every unnecessary emergency, every jealous reaction, every one-sided relationship, and every conversation where you're forced to explain basic responsibility takes something out of you. You may not notice the damage in one day. You may not notice it in 1 week. But look back over 5 years spent dealing with the same draining personalities, and suddenly you understand how much of your life disappeared while you were trying to fix problems that never belonged to you in the first place. That's why protecting your peace isn't simply about avoiding loud or obviously toxic people. Sometimes the most draining person in your life can appear harmless. They may smile in your face. They may call you friend. They may tell you how much they appreciate you. But the pattern of their behavior tells a completely different story. Intelligent people learn to stop judging relationships only by words. They watch patterns. They notice who brings peace and who brings confusion. They pay attention to who celebrates them and who becomes uncomfortable when they grow. They learn that access to their life should be earned through character, consistency, and mutual respect. The deeper lesson is that intelligence isn't only about being educated, reading books, making money, or being able to solve difficult problems. Real intelligence also means learning who deserves your time. It means understanding when a conversation has been a waste of energy. It means recognizing when helping someone has turned into enabling them. It means knowing that you can care about a person and still refuse to allow them to occupy the center of your life. There are at least 6 types of people that intelligent individuals eventually learn to approach with extreme caution. And if you're paying attention, you may recognize a few of them in your own life right now. People who constantly create drama. There are people who seem uncomfortable when life is peaceful. If nothing is wrong, they'll find something to make wrong. If an argument doesn't exist, they'll create one. If 2 people are getting along, they'll introduce suspicion, gossip, misunderstanding, or jealousy into the situation. Their lives become a never-ending series of emotional fires, and somehow they always expect everyone around them to grab a bucket of water and help put those fires out. Intelligent people learn that constant drama isn't the same thing as having a difficult life. Everybody goes through problems. Everybody experiences loss, disappointment, conflict, financial pressure, family issues, and unexpected challenges. Life can hit any of us hard. The difference is how a person handles those problems. A mature person may experience chaos without spreading that chaos to everybody around them. A person addicted to drama often does the opposite. Their problem becomes everybody's problem. Their emotions become everybody's responsibility. And if you're close to them, they expect you to live inside their storm. Imagine receiving a phone call from the same person several times every week. Every call begins with another crisis. Somebody betrayed them. Somebody disrespected them. Somebody owes them money. Somebody said something about them. Somebody's trying to destroy their life. At first, because you're a caring person, you listen. You offer advice. You calm them down. You may even become angry on their behalf. But after months and years, you begin to notice something disturbing. The names may change, but the pattern never does. Every environment they enter eventually becomes toxic. That's when intelligent people begin asking a different question. Instead of asking, why does everybody keep doing this to them? They begin asking, why does the same type of chaos keep following this person everywhere they go? That's not about blaming someone for every bad thing that happens to them. Sometimes people truly are victims of unfair circumstances. But when a person has conflict with every friend, every family member, every coworker, every neighbor, every romantic partner, and every social group, eventually you have to consider whether they might be contributing to the confusion. Drama consumes attention, no doubt. It interrupts focus. It destroys routines. It can pull you into arguments that have nothing to do with you. You may wake up with plans to work, study, exercise, build a business, spend time with your family, or simply rest, only to spend the entire day emotionally trapped in somebody else's crisis. Before you know it, your own priorities have been pushed aside because another person's chaos demanded immediate attention. The most dangerous drama creators often know exactly how to make you feel guilty for stepping back. The moment you establish distance, they may accuse you of changing. They may say you're cold, selfish, arrogant, or disloyal. But intelligence requires the ability to separate compassion from captivity. You can care about someone without becoming a permanent employee in the emergency department of their life. Some people don't want solutions because solutions would end the drama. They may reject every piece of advice you give them, only to return later with the same complaint. They may tell you they want peace while repeatedly choosing people, environments, habits, and decisions that guarantee chaos. Eventually, intelligent people understand that you can't rescue someone who is committed to repeating the behavior that keeps them drowning. Peace can feel boring to a person who is addicted to emotional excitement. Healthy relationships can feel strange to someone who only understands conflict. That's why you have to be careful. If you're constantly being pulled into another person's emotional roller coaster, you may eventually forget what a peaceful life feels like. People who secretly compete with you. Competition can be healthy when it's open, respectful, and understood by everyone involved. But hidden competition inside a friendship or close relationship is something completely different. That's when you believe someone is walking beside you while they are quietly measuring every step you take and trying to make sure you never get too far ahead. A real friend doesn't have to live your life to appreciate your success. They don't have to own what you own, achieve what you achieve, or receive the same attention that you receive in order to be happy for you. They understand that your victory doesn't automatically become their defeat. But a secretly competitive person sees life differently. When you rise, they feel smaller. When you improve, they feel threatened. When something good happens for you, they immediately begin searching for a way to compare themselves. You may notice it when you share good news. You tell them about an accomplishment, and instead of celebrating, they immediately change the subject to something they've done. You tell them you've reached a personal goal, and they respond by explaining why their situation is better. You make progress in your health, finances, career, creativity, or personal life, and suddenly they become strangely distant. Sometimes jealousy doesn't look like hatred. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes the person who says, "That's good," is secretly bothered by the fact that you're no longer standing in the same place where they left you. They may have enjoyed the version of you who struggled beside them. They may have been comfortable when you doubted yourself. But once you begin growing, changing your habits, developing discipline, or becoming more confident, the relationship starts revealing hidden cracks. Intelligent people learn not to announce every move to everybody around them. That's not because they want to live in fear or paranoia. It's because they understand that information is a form of access. Not everyone needs to know what you're building before you've built it. Not everyone needs to know your next plan, your next goal, your next opportunity, or your next level of growth. A secretly competitive person may even disguise jealousy as concern. They'll question every opportunity you have. They'll point out every possible problem. They'll remind you of every time you failed. They'll tell you to be realistic whenever you begin thinking bigger. Yet when they pursue something for themselves, they expect you to encourage them without hesitation. That's why intelligent people watch how others respond to their success. You can learn a great deal about a person's heart by watching their reaction when you win. Anybody can stand next to you when you're losing because your weakness may make them feel comfortable, but not everybody can stand next to you when you're rising. Remember that. The healthiest relationships allow both people to grow without turning life into a scoreboard. If every conversation becomes a comparison, if every achievement becomes a contest, and if every good thing that happens to you seems to create discomfort in someone else, you have to question whether that relationship is truly supportive. Your growth shouldn't require somebody else's humiliation. Their success shouldn't require your failure. Intelligent people understand that there is enough room in life for more than one person to win. But they also understand that some people can't be trusted with a front row seat to your progress because they're not cheering for you. They're studying you. People who only take. Some people enter your life with open hands but closed hearts. They are always reaching for something: your time, your money, your advice, your contacts, your energy, your emotional support, your resources, your transportation, your knowledge, your home, your patience. They may not always ask directly, but the relationship slowly becomes organized around what you can do for them. At first, giving can feel good. Human beings are naturally capable of generosity. Helping someone through a difficult period can strengthen a relationship. Offering advice can be meaningful. Supporting a friend during a crisis can be an act of love. The problem begins when the relationship becomes permanently one-sided. Think about the person who disappears when life is going well, but suddenly remembers your number whenever they need something. They may not ask how you're doing. They may not know what you're struggling with. They may not remember important moments in your life. But somehow, when their car breaks down, when their rent is due, their relationship collapses, or they need someone to listen for 3 hours, you're expected to become immediately available. Intelligent people eventually recognize the difference between someone who occasionally needs help and someone who has made other people responsible for their life. The first person may be going through a temporary hardship. The second person has created a permanent pattern. One-sided relationships can become especially dangerous when the giver has a big heart. Caring people are often vulnerable to manipulation because they don't want to see anyone suffer. They may keep giving because they believe that eventually the other person will appreciate them and change. But gratitude isn't guaranteed simply because you've been generous. Sometimes the more you give, the more the wrong person believes they're entitled to receive. That's where resentment begins. You may not even realize you're becoming resentful at first. You answer another phone call when you're exhausted. You lend money you can't afford to lose. You cancel your plans to deal with another emergency. You listen to another problem even though you know the person will ignore your advice. Eventually, you begin feeling angry, but instead of examining the relationship, you blame yourself for being tired. Intelligent people learn that generosity without boundaries can become self-destruction. Helping someone shouldn't require destroying your own stability. Supporting someone shouldn't mean abandoning your own needs. Being available doesn't mean you have to be accessible 24 hours a day. The true test is reciprocity. That doesn't mean every relationship must be mathematically equal. Sometimes you may give more because the other person is going through a difficult season. At another time, they may give more because you're the one facing a challenge. Healthy relationships breathe back and forth. But if the relationship only moves in one direction, eventually you have to face reality. You are not participating in a relationship, you're being used as a resource. The person who truly values you may appreciate what you do, but they also value who you are. The person who only values what they can get from you may become irritated the moment you say no. That's why no is one of the greatest tests you can give any relationship. Watch what happens when you become unavailable. Watch how people respond when you establish a limit. The reaction can reveal whether they respected you or merely enjoyed access to you. People who refuse to take responsibility. There are people who are always innocent in the story of their own life. Nothing is ever their fault. Every failed relationship was caused by someone else. Every job problem was somebody else's doing. Every financial disaster happened because they were unlucky. Every argument began because someone misunderstood them. Every bad decision came with a perfectly prepared excuse. Intelligent people understand that nobody is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has moments where they could have handled something better. But maturity begins when a person can look in the mirror and say, "I was wrong." That sentence can change a life. The person who refuses responsibility can repeat the same destructive behavior forever because they never identify themselves as part of the problem. If every failure belongs to somebody else, then they never have a reason to change. Why improve when the entire world is supposedly responsible for everything that goes wrong? You may find yourself arguing with this type of person for hours. You explain what happened. You show them the facts. You remind them of what they said and what they did. But instead of reflection, you receive denial. The conversation goes in circles. Suddenly, the subject changes magically. Suddenly, your past mistakes are brought into the discussion. Suddenly, you're defending yourself instead of addressing the original problem. Intelligent people eventually stop trying to force accountability into someone who has built their identity around avoiding it. You can't argue a person into maturity. You can't debate someone into honesty with themselves. You can't spend 20 years explaining the same pattern and expect a different result simply because you become better at explaining it. Personal responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that happens in life. Some circumstances are beyond our control. People can experience injustice, betrayal, discrimination, loss, and unexpected hardship. But even in difficult circumstances, there's still a question that mature people eventually ask: what can I control now? That's where growth begins. The person who constantly blames others gives away their power because they place the solution to every problem in somebody else's hands. If everyone else is responsible, then everyone else must change before their life can improve. Intelligent people understand how dangerous that mindset can become. They don't waste endless emotional energy trying to convince someone to take responsibility. They pay attention to whether that person learns from mistakes. Do they apologize? Do they change behavior? Do they make corrections? Or do they simply create another excuse? An apology without change can become another form of manipulation. A promise without action can become another delay. Intelligent people eventually become less impressed by explanations and more interested in patterns. You don't have to hate someone who refuses responsibility. You don't have to insult them, but you may need to stop building your peace around the hope that they will suddenly become accountable. Sometimes the most intelligent decision isn't winning the argument. Sometimes it's refusing to have the same argument for the 100th time. People who don't respect boundaries. This is one of the most important types of people to recognize, because boundary violations can be disguised as love, friendship, concern, family loyalty, or even humor. A person may tell you that they care about you while repeatedly ignoring the limits you've clearly established. You say you need rest, but they keep calling and demanding your attention. You tell them you don't want to discuss a certain subject, but they continue bringing it up. You tell them you can't lend money, but they pressure you until you feel guilty. You explain that you need privacy, but they believe every part of your life belongs to them. The problem isn't always that people don't understand your boundaries. Sometimes they understand perfectly. They simply don't like them. That's a major difference. Intelligent people eventually learn that a boundary isn't a request for approval. You don't have to convince everyone that your limit makes sense. You don't need a committee to vote on whether you're allowed to protect your time. If you have clearly communicated what you will and will not accept, a healthy person may not always like it, but they understand that you have the right to establish it. A person who repeatedly ignores boundaries is often testing how much access they can maintain. Every time you say no and then give in because of pressure, They learn that your boundaries can be broken. Every time they insult you, demand your attention, invade your privacy, or manipulate your emotions and face no consequences, the behavior becomes easier to repeat. This can happen in friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships, workplaces, and online spaces. The person may believe that history gives them unlimited access to you. They may say, "I've known you for years," as though knowing you automatically gives them the right to control your time and emotional space. But history isn't ownership. Intelligent people understand that some relationships become unhealthy because people confuse closeness with entitlement. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they have the right to remain in the same position forever. People change, circumstances change, your responsibilities change, your priorities change. Sometimes growth requires new boundaries. The most revealing moment often comes after you establish one. A healthy person may need time to adjust, but they eventually respect the limit. A controlling person may become angry because your boundary interrupts their access. That's why intelligent people pay close attention to how someone responds to the word no. Anybody can enjoy you when you're constantly available. Anybody can call you wonderful when you're always giving. The real test begins when you stop allowing unlimited access. You don't have to scream to establish a boundary. You don't have to write a 10-page explanation. Sometimes a calm and clear decision is enough. And if a person repeatedly refuses to respect it, intelligence means understanding that distance may become the boundary itself. People who are comfortable with your weakness but uncomfortable with your growth. This type of person can be difficult to recognize because they may genuinely enjoy your company. The problem is that they enjoy a particular version of you. They may be comfortable with you when you're insecure. They may enjoy your presence when you're struggling financially, emotionally, or personally, because there's no major difference between where you are and where they are. But once you begin changing, something shifts. You start eating better. Suddenly, they constantly encourage you to break your discipline. You start exercising. They joke about how seriously you're taking it. You decide to save money. They pressure you to spend. You become more focused. They accuse you of acting different. You begin taking your goals seriously. And they remind you of the old version of yourself as though your past should be your permanent identity. The truth is that some people build their comfort around your limitations. Your weakness may make them feel secure because as long as you remain stuck, they don't have to examine their own life. But your growth can become a mirror. It may force them to confront the changes they know they need to make. That's why your improvement can sometimes make certain people uncomfortable, even when you've done nothing against them. Intelligent people understand that growth changes relationships. When you change your habits, you may change who you spend time with. When you change your priorities, certain conversations may no longer interest you. When you begin respecting yourself, you may stop tolerating behavior that you once accepted. Some people interpret your growth as rejection because your growth removes the version of you that was convenient for them. This doesn't mean that every person who questions your choices is jealous or against you. Sometimes a person who loves you may honestly disagree with your direction. That's why intelligence requires observation rather than paranoia. Look at the overall pattern. Do they challenge you because they want you to think carefully? Or do they constantly pull you backward whenever you try to move forward? A person who truly cares about you may challenge your decisions, but they don't need you to remain small in order to feel comfortable around you. The people who want the best for you don't always agree with everything you do, but they don't secretly celebrate your setbacks either. They don't become more comfortable when you fail than when you succeed. Intelligent people eventually learn to protect the environment around their growth. A plant can have everything it needs inside of it, but if the environment is constantly hostile, its development can be limited. Human beings are no different. If you're constantly surrounded by people who mock your discipline, discourage your goals, minimize your accomplishments, and pull you back toward habits you've outgrown, eventually you must ask whether your environment is supporting your future or protecting your past. The real cost of giving the wrong people access. The biggest mistake isn't always allowing the wrong person into your life. We're human. We don't always recognize people's intentions immediately. The greater mistake is seeing the pattern clearly and continuing to pretend that it doesn't exist. Intelligent people aren't perfect judges of character. They can be fooled. They can be betrayed. They can make poor choices in relationships just like anybody else. The difference is that eventually they learn from that experience. They stop making permanent excuses for temporary behavior. They stop calling repeated disrespect a misunderstanding. They stop calling manipulation concern. They stop calling jealousy friendship. That's where emotional intelligence becomes powerful, very powerful. The people around you influence how you think, how you feel, how you spend your time, and sometimes even what you believe is normal. Spend enough time around chaos, and peace may begin to feel unfamiliar. Spend enough time around negativity, and optimism can begin to feel unrealistic. Spend enough time around people who avoid responsibility, and excuses can slowly become part of your own thinking. Your circle doesn't have to be perfect, wealthy, educated, or identical to you. That's not the point. The point is character. Do the people around you respect your humanity? Can they celebrate your progress? Can they accept responsibility? Can they respect a boundary? Can they give as well as receive? Can they experience peace without creating a problem? Those questions matter more than popularity. You may have hundreds of contacts and still have very few people you can trust. You may attend crowded events and still feel alone. You may have a large family and still need boundaries with certain relatives. Intelligence means understanding that being surrounded by people isn't the same thing as being supported by people. Sometimes the most intelligent move you can make is to reduce access without creating a war. You don't have to announce your departure. You don't have to write a speech explaining why you're changing. You can simply become less available to the patterns that no longer deserve your energy. Your peace is part of your future. Every day, you're making an investment with your attention. You're investing in conversations. You're investing in relationships. You're investing in problems. You're investing in people. The question is whether those investments are producing growth or quietly draining your life. The person who constantly creates drama can consume your emotional energy. A secretly competitive person can poison the joy of your accomplishments. A person who only takes can turn your kindness into their personal resource. A person who refuses responsibility can trap you in endless arguments and repeated disappointment. A person who refuses to respect boundaries can make you feel like you're not allowed to control your own life. A person who becomes uncomfortable with your growth can quietly pressure you to return to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. None of this means you should become cold, suspicious, or isolated from the world. The goal isn't to hate people. The goal is to understand people. You can be kind without being naive. You can be generous without becoming somebody's permanent source of supply. You can forgive without restoring the same level of access. You can love someone and still recognize that closeness with them is unhealthy. That's one of the hardest lessons many people ever learn. We often believe that history, love, family, friendship, or shared experiences automatically require permanent access. But sometimes the relationship you needed at one stage of your life isn't the relationship you need in the next stage. Some people belong to a chapter without belonging in the entire book. That's not cruelty, that's growth. The intelligence of walking away. Walking away doesn't always mean physically disappearing from someone's life forever. Sometimes walking away means walking away from an argument that has no purpose. Sometimes it means refusing to explain your boundary for the 20th time. Sometimes it means no longer lending money to someone who has demonstrated that repayment isn't part of their character. Sometimes it means stopping the competition before you even agree to participate. Distance can be physical, emotional, financial, conversational, or psychological. You may still see the person. You may still speak to them. You may still wish them well, but you stop allowing their behavior to control your inner world. That's a form of freedom. A mature mind eventually understands that you can't save everybody, convince everybody, carry everybody, or grow beside everybody. Some people will misunderstand your boundaries because those boundaries reduce their access. Some will accuse you of changing because you stopped being convenient. Some will call you distant because you stopped allowing them to create emotional emergencies in your life. Let them have their opinion. Your responsibility isn't to remain emotionally exhausted so other people can feel comfortable. Your responsibility is to build a life where your mind has room to think, your heart has room to heal, and your energy has room to create. And your future isn't constantly being sacrificed to the demands of people who have no intention of changing. The lesson many people learn too late. The sad reality is that many people don't learn these lessons until they've already lost years. They look back and realize how much time they spent trying to prove themselves to jealous people. They remember how much money they lost trying to rescue people who never changed. They think about the endless arguments with people who never accepted responsibility. They recognize how much emotional energy disappeared into drama that never should have become their problem. But there's good news in recognizing the pattern. The moment you see clearly, you can begin making different decisions. You don't have to hate people you've outgrown. You don't have to spend the rest of your life angry about what happened. The lesson isn't about becoming bitter. It's about becoming wiser. Maybe you've been the person who gave too much. Maybe you've ignored jealousy because you've wanted to believe the best about someone. Maybe you remained in chaotic relationships because you confused constant drama with passion. Maybe you spent years trying to make an irresponsible person finally understand what they did wrong. Whatever the lesson was, you don't have to continue paying for it forever. The most powerful boundary may simply be the decision that you will no longer ignore what repeated behavior is showing you. People can tell you who they are with words, but patterns tell you who they are with time. Pay attention to the patterns. Protect your peace. Protect your energy. Protect the future that you're trying to build. And understand that intelligent people aren't necessarily the people with the biggest vocabulary, the most degrees, or the most money. Sometimes the most intelligent person in the room is the one who finally learned that everybody doesn't deserve unlimited access to their life. That's wisdom. And for many people, wisdom only arrives after they've learned the hard way. So ask yourself an honest question. Is there someone in your life who constantly brings drama? Is there someone who smiles when you're struggling but becomes quiet when you're succeeding? Is there someone who only appears when they need something? Is there someone who has an excuse for every mistake? Is there someone who refuses to respect your boundaries? Is there someone who seems more comfortable with the old version of you than the person you're becoming? You don't have to answer that question publicly, but you do have to answer it honestly. Because the quality of your life is deeply connected to the quality of the people who have access to it. And sometimes the greatest sign of intelligence isn't knowing what to say. It's knowing who you no longer need to say anything to. I hope these words have stimulated you. I hope you've learned something. Much love to you all. On to the next one. Scurv out. And as always, I wish you nothing but peace.